My name is Mark Godfrey. I'm a curator at Tate Modern, and I'll be talking today about a new display that's gone up in the collection displays here called Painting After Technology. It's a single room in a wing called Making Traces, and it brings together 11 works by 9 different artists. These artists are based in the United States, in England and in Germany, and they're involved in a conversation about what painting means today. The most senior artist in the display is Sigmar Polke, who has passed away, but Polke was a teacher of Albert Oehlen. Albert Oehlen is very close friends with Christopher Wool, who is married to Charlene von Heil, who was working in Dusseldorf very much in the presence of Polke and Oehlen. Charlene von Heil is in regular dialogue with Jacqueline Humphreys, Amy Silman, has great respect for Laura Owens. And then there's Thomas Apts, who is now a professor at the Kunstakademie in Dusseldorf, which is, of course, the city where Charlene's earliest work was made and where Polke and Oehlen had a great presence. One thing that interests me about painting today is how painters confront a world where screens are so present in our lives, giving us new information, distracting us, keeping us at work the whole time. For instance, we all know what it's like to have an iPhone or a BlackBerry delivering emails that we have to respond to at all hours of the day. And I think painting faces onto this situation by, painters have to ask what kind of attention do we bring to that experience of a painting and how to make that moment special and different from our experience of images on screen or distraction. And a lot of the painters in the display work with tricks to make us really concentrate. Often those tricks are about layers. You know, when we look at a computer screen, we're seeing things that appear to be in different layers, different windows, but are in fact all on the same layer. Whereas when we look at a painting by Laura Owens, we're seeing lots of strokes, of silk screens, of grids, but they're on actually physical different layers. And for instance, a crest of impasto paint might cast a shadow onto another part of the painting. She'll also paint a drop shadow to confuse what's a real shadow, what's a drop shadow, or an illusionistic shadow. Charlene von Heil works with layering in a different way, creating the impression, for instance, that there are windows in the painting to previous layers of paint, under layers of paint, whereas in fact, when you come very close, you realize she's playing with us, she's kind of screwing with our expectations of what the layers on a painting may be. And then in Albert Oehlen's work, he directly just pastes, I think it's an advert for a rock band, and the painting happens on top of that surface. In another part of that painting, there are images taken from a supermarket advert from a Spanish supermarket. So he puts abstract paintwork in dialogue with the imagery of a rock band or of blueberries or whatever it is from this advert. Then we have the artist Wade Guyton, who takes TIFF from his screen and prints it out using an Epson printer straight onto canvas. But he's interested in the fact that when it gets printed, there are always glitches. The printer head clogs up, the sheet of canvas might jam within the printer, and therefore you arrive at lots of unexpected textures, and it's exactly these textures which really gives his painting its visual quality. It's the errors between the image on the computer and the final painting. The painting by Sigmar Polke in the display includes images of angels that probably derive from 19th century print. He has photocopied that print, enlarged the photocopy, projected the print onto the surface of the painting, and painted in the dots of the half-tone reproduction of that print. And this approach to technologies and really the idea of taking an image and replicating it in such a way that different mediums are involved and that the image's recognizability is screwed up. That has influenced, I think, the approach to technology that a lot of these artists are working with. So for instance, Christopher Wool, there's two works by Wool. One is a painting made with spray paints, brushes and rags. Another is a work made which uses a photograph of that same painting that's manipulated on the computer screen, stuck and kind of cut and pasted together with bits of images of other paintings, and then he's made a silk screen of whatever was on the computer screen, and then added on top of that patches of enamel paint. So using different technologies, some physical, some virtual, but always to mess around with them. When Thomas Aptes begins a painting, she doesn't have any preconceived idea of the composition, and it works itself out very gradually. She'll make marks and then work against those and so on, and this process might take months until somehow the painting feels resolved. But when you look at the work, you really get a sense of these different layers that she's worked with. Very small ridges of paint that register the fact that there are different numbers of layers of paint underneath. And I think this practice is one kind of response to a world filled with information. She sits in her studio and works on these very intimate paintings. I see Thomas Aptes' practice as another response to this world that's crammed with information, where we're receiving images and language all the time. In Jacqueline Humphrey's work, we see, well, it's a large painting which is made up mainly of areas of silver paint and this incredibly dense black pigment. And I think she's quite interested in a world where we're sometimes hit by the glow of our screens. And she creates a work where glow happens, but in an unpredictable way. It's a very animated painting. As you walk around it, the reflection changes at any point. You see something different because of the way the light catches on that silver paint. Amy Silman works, as well as with her paintings, she works on iPads, and she makes animations on iPads. It's almost like a changing painting. This work is called 13 Possible Futures, Cartoon for a Painting. And it's based on a painting called Jewel, and it imagines 13 different ways in which that painting Jewel might have gone had she continued. Images change in a very fluid way, and it's very humorous. It clearly looks back to the history of cartoons, to artists like Philip Guston. Also, I think of quite a lot of Robert Gober's work, The Slides of a Changing Painting. But the images change and morph into each other. And I think it's interesting that she first showed this animation alongside a painting. And kind of in reference to that, we put the iPad next to the canvas. A lot of the artists in this display are using everyday things like scanners, photocopiers, iPads. They're painting on top of posters or magazine pages or supermarket adverts. And for me, there's a real democracy there in the idea of people using what they have around them already to make art.